What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be replacing the DME or the ECU or the engine management computer, ECM, whatever you want to call it. We're going to be replacing it. So whether yours got bricked or you're applying a tune or whatever, it's basically the same process for all of it, replacement or upgrading, either way. I'm going to be replacing mine for a performance tune and to get rid of the pesky check engine light I got from the manual conversion. Tools we will be using: a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips screwdriver, a ratchet. This one is a 1/4 inch. You could absolutely use a 3/8. Just 1/4 inch is a little bit easier because it's kind of smaller. A 13mm socket. This is going to be for disconnecting the battery. And a 10mm socket. This is going to be for those two little nuts on the foam section in front of the DME cover. I'll explain that more later. Just know that they are plastic, so do be careful. You might break them if you wrench on them too hard. Now, the first thing and probably the most important thing we're going to need to do is disconnect the battery. Now, because we're working with the engine computer, we don't want to have electricity going through it while we're messing with it, moving it or unplugging it. I'm not exactly sure what would happen if you pulled the ECU out with the battery connected and electricity going through it, but it's probably not a good thing. Now, I do know with the engine off and the key out that there theoretically shouldn't be electricity running through the ECU, but we're not even going to risk testing that at all. We're just going to disconnect the battery. It's super simple, and it ensures the safety of your DME and making sure you don't fry your ECU. So we're going to pop the cover off, and we're going to disconnect the negative cable right here. That guy is a simple 13. We're going to take him off, and I like to take a rag and wrap it around the negative terminal and kind of push it down out of the way, just to make sure that it doesn't like move back and make a connection with the battery. Now, moving into the engine bay, right there is where we're going to be working. That little foam piece, the ECU is tucked in behind there, and we do need to get this foam guy out of the way first. Now I'm going to take a flathead screwdriver and we're going to pull these little guys, these little plastic clips out. Now, you're supposed to take the edge of it, and you see that little groove there, and pry this pin out. But what I've found is that they tend to break like that one did, so I sort of just go behind it and gently pry the whole thing off as one, and they tend to come out without snapping in half like that. So we're just going to work all three of them off. Now, moving on, that little black thing right there is a 10mm plastic nut. There's one right there, and then there's one on the other side down right there, and those guys are just simple 10mm, and we do need to take them off. And now we're going to gently pry this out. These guys, I've noticed, have tend to be very brittle, so if you just gently move things as you need to and work him up on out. And that's going to reveal the main DME like little cover plate. So all the computers hide behind this guy. So this is where we're going to use our Phillips driver. There are a bunch of screws that hold this guy into place. There's one here, 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 and then there's one down here that we need to get off. And these guys won't come all the way out. They'll just sort of hang out once they're off, basically. Now, a couple things when you're pulling this guy out. Number one, this little section right here, the actual harness is tucked in, and the harness is rubber, so it kind of likes to hold on a little bit. So you can see as I move that, the harness moves with it. Also, down here on the body, on the chassis, there's a little lip, and so the cover kind of sits in like that. So what you have to do is you have to pull it out and up. This thing is not going to come straight out. It's going to come like angle down and then come out. So if we hold the harness, we can get it to move out like that, and then it comes kind of up. There we go. Alright, so I've moved the automatic transmission computer out of the way just to give you guys a little bit better sight as to what's going on here, but that's the DME right there. Now, if you'll notice, it has like a little mounting bracket plate. There's a screw right there and a screw right there, and that's just to sort of hold everything together, but you don't necessarily have to unscrew those to get the ECU out. We're just going to slide our hand back in here and just slowly pull this guy out. we go. And if you're having a hard time, you can lightly unscrew those 2 screws. If you look in there and you can see what I'm talking about, but you don't have to take those off to get it out. Also, don't take them all the way out. I found out the hard way that they can be kind of a pain to get back in because it is a tight space. There she is. Now to get it off, we're gonna sort of pull out on the tabs on that, and you see it popped up. And then we can lift it up like that, and then it's going to twist out. So you see that action right there? So to get it back in, it's going to be the same thing. We got to put it in at an angle and then tilt it down, and then the clip is going to go in. So just don't forget about that motion. Once this comes up, it does not come straight up. It kind of rolls up and then out. And now that's out, you can do whatever you want. Replace it, send it in, get it tuned, whatever you gotta do. I am going to be replacing mine with one tuned by Castle Performance. So this is just their performance tune, and it's got a manual tune on it, which is nice. So it'll get rid of the check engine light I have from the manual conversion. One thing to note, if you are putting in a different ECU than you pulled out, you must have the EWS deleted, otherwise it's not going to start. Or you can get it, put it in, and then have it retuned, basically resync the EWS system so that it'll basically start. You can do this at the BMW dealership, so I've heard of guys actually going to the dealership and swapping these out in the parking lot and then just rolling it into the shop, getting it tuned, whatever you got to do, or towing it in, or however you want to get it tuned. Just know if you're running a different ECU and you don't have the EWS system deleted, the car won't start. So now basically it's just a reverse order of what we just did. So we're going to roll it in. Boom, just like that. And do note when you're sliding it back in that these little tabs on the side here do have to go in the little respective plates from which we slid them out. So if you look in there, you guys can see that brass tab. So the ECU, those little sliding sections are going to slide underneath that on both sides. So make sure that it gets slid underneath those. That is going to hold the ECU in place so it's not bouncing around the cabin while you're driving around. There we go. He's not moving around. Once everything's all nice and tucked back in, we basically just put the covers back on. So starting with this guy, again, you want to get this lip under here. So if you guys can see this little lip that I'm talking about, it runs the whole length of the little compartment right there. That is where this guy is going to go. If you'll note this little groove right there that extends in the plastic, that is going to go right in this little matching groove in the actual rubber on the harness. So we're going to want to get this guy in there and sort of work this on at the same time. Sort of twist him up and slide him in. There we go. There we go. And then we're going to screw our 4 screws back in. There we go. And now we're going to slide this big ugly thing back into place. Let's get our clips back on. You see this guy's all cracked up because they're so brittle. And last but not least, we got these little plastic nuts that go back into their little spots. Now when you're tightening these guys down, keep in mind that they are just plastic little nuts. Just snug them. Don't freaking tighten them too much, otherwise you're going to break them. So just snug them, be careful, that's all I'm going to say. And the last step is going to be to reconnect our battery. There we go. Alright, our DME is replaced. Thank you guys so much for watching. Keep it fresh, and I will see you guys later.
does. Search but you stay lost. We are